optimistic talk about a vaccine making it to Colorado soon. We love optimism. We also love facts and reality about who's going to get vaccinated and when. While the governor promises, together we can save Christmas. Like this is some kind of Hallmark movie. Colorado's Republicans in the legislature decide whether to go left or right after another tough election year. And I'll have a word about the one Republican who wore a mask to today's meeting. We found out where the wildlife went when the wildfires burned through, and the story behind the roar heard for generations in Denver. That's next. The governor's optimistic view on vaccines today is built on a mountain of ifs. Now, does not mean that the governor's wrong. Just think that you should know what needs to happen in order for Colorado to really get 100,000 to 200,000 doses of that Pfizer vaccine that was touted today, and to get them by the end of the year. I mean, that would be wonderful. Democratic Governor Jared Polis' prediction can happen if Pfizer's promising trials pan out, and if Pfizer is able to meet or beat production levels mentioned in their press release today, and if Colorado gets its percentage share of vaccine for our percentage of the American population. So it is press release plus positivity plus percentages. That's how the governor arrived at the announcement today that got everybody talking, including our Steve Steger, talking to health leaders.
It's the news alert you've been dying to read since March. Pfizer says their COVID-19 vaccine has proven more than 90% effective in early trials, and it could get emergency authorization later this month.
We're hopeful there'll be some dosage in 2020 for Colorado, could be 100, 200,000.
Governor Polis today said that number is a conservative estimate for 2020 based on Colorado's percentage of the population.
That will be used according to the vaccination plan that we submitted.
So those numbers of 100,000, 200,000 really are very limited.
Chris Campbell is developing the vaccine distribution plan for Boulder County. He says that estimate is a fraction of what's needed.
That probably won't even meet the need of that in-house healthcare worker at the hospitals that we see.
The state's plan prioritizes who gets vaccinated based on availability. First, inoculating the estimated 182,000 hospital healthcare workers, then the 101,000 outpatient healthcare workers and first responders.
The hospitals have a plan in place and are working on plans to receive that vaccine.
46,000 residents in nursing homes and care facilities are next on that list. Then more than 500,000 people who are either considered essential workers or who live in congregate care, everything from college dorms to group homes to prison. That's 1 million people who need to get this vaccine first, before the 2.3 million adults over 65 and adults at high risk. And after they are vaccinated, the general public, or another 1.9 million adults from 18 to 64, would be the last people in Colorado to get the first round of shots. No matter the scenario, local health leaders say that they have been planning for a long time.
We'll be ready to go, just depending on how much we see. We'll be ready to get it out to the community.
So 100,000 to 200,000. What happens if that is not enough to take care of that first phase, the healthcare workers? Campbell says that hospitals then will likely prioritize who gets the vaccine from their staff based on who's highest risk. As for the rest of us, he says this vaccine will be widely available, or when it's widely available, they'll be ready to either give it to doctors. They'll also have it available at those drive-through facilities where people can go, like we're so familiar with the testing, Kyle. So the thing is, it will be widely available. They have a plan for that. It just might take a little while, and you've got to hit all of those other factors first.
Yeah, the governor's idea that all of Colorado would be vaccinated in early 2021 seems to outpace the scientists on this. I think, Steve, more than anything, we want people to have realistic expectations, because the last thing that you want is another scenario where it's like the pot tax money, where when people can't get vaccinated by March of 2021, they're like, where are all the vaccines and the pot tax money? Where'd it go?
Yeah, and now you just bringing up the pot tax money is going to get a million questions in our inboxes about where does that go. Yeah, that's the thing, is just trying to create that expectation and giving people real information on the front end so they're not thinking that everything will be solved by the end of the year. We are a long way away from solving this. Yeah,
bottom line is the behavior that the governor wants to incentivize by putting this carrot out there with the vaccines, it's the same behavior that the health experts would be asking people for even if the vaccine was not on the horizon. Steve, thank you. Because Colorado passed the 1,000 hospitalizations mark at last check. 1,060 of our neighbors are so sick with COVID-19 they're currently in the hospital. This time last week it was 668 patients. You can look at the curve for yourself there. Hospitalizations have doubled in less than 2 weeks with no sign of slowing. So we'll look for that slowing first in the new case count. That's where the plateau will first emerge. We added more than 3,300 new cases yesterday. It's up from our weekly average of a bit more than 3,000 a day. We are cranking along there at our highest new case rate during the pandemic. Knowing that cases will rise with mass testing, that's also why we show you positivity every day. And our 12.8% test positive rate yesterday suggests that Colorado is not currently testing enough in order to effectively catch and isolate people who are contagious so they don't infect others. We are, however, seeing an encouraging drop in the number of daily deaths. This is the toughest number to show you on a day-by-day basis because the deaths are often reported well after the fact. But what we're seeing now is a bit more than 4 deaths a day in this state. End of last month, it was more than 10 deaths a day. The governor was asked today if he's canceling the holidays. Of course, the governor can't do that, but the question was getting at what state health leaders recommend with Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, so forth coming up. And the advice from the governor was pretty brutal, that people self-quarantine for 10 days leading up to gathering for Thanksgiving dinner. That is obviously an impossibility for a lot of Coloradans who have to go out and work for a living. The governor's broader point, though, was that the decisions that we make now, like in the next couple of weeks, can still ease the pandemic ahead of the holidays.
This is why we have a few-week window here to get this better under control so that we have a more normal Thanksgiving. Obviously, we're much more there'll be a very different epidemiological condition by Christmas. So as long as Coloradans are canceling their social interactions the next few weeks with those outside their household, together we can save Christmas.
No surprise, governor extended the mask mandate for another 30 days. Some Coloradans have elected to ignore the mask mandate. Others have elected people who elect to ignore the mask mandate. Colorado's chief anti-masker is leaving Republican legislative leadership at the Capitol, giving his party, Republican Party, the chance to decide if confrontation or compromise is going to be their goal. Outgoing GOP Minority Leader Patrick Neville's stand against the science of masks, though, does appear to be an enduring legacy for his caucus. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
House Republicans met in person this morning at the Capitol to pick a new minority leader to replace Representative Patrick Neville, who did not seek the top spot again. These were the 3 candidates, but I'll just cut to the chase.
Our new minority leader is Representative McKean.
Loveland Representative Hugh McKean is now the leader of the 24 Republicans in the state House. There are 41 Democrats. Following last week's election that showed Colorado go overwhelmingly blue for president and senator, the House Republicans actually won a seat in Pueblo, but lost another in Littleton, and enter next year with the same number, 24.
We hear all this talk about how blue Colorado might be getting. I don't believe it for a second.
Since Tuesday, we've been asking Republicans, what is the future for Colorado Republicans? McKean paints himself as a Reagan Republican for individual rights, small government, fiscal accountability, and a free enterprise system.
Those things are Republican values. Those things are things that so many of us ascribe to. And I think that matters so much more than some of the individual issues.
The direction that I believe this caucus will go is not the one that I necessarily signed up for.
Colorado Springs Representative Dave Williams was going to run for the number 2 leader job, but dropped out. Then, as a bit of a surprise, McKean asked him to reconsider. He thought about it, but said he already promised his support to Falcon Representative Tim Geithner, who ended up winning the job.
My fear is that with this leadership, we might actually have our party go more to the left, and that you might see more compromising and more cooperation with Democrats on areas that we should not be cooperating with them on.
I'm an ardent Second Amendment supporter. I am incredibly conservative ideologically, but I also know that the service to our voters, that not all of them are that.
Now to the elephant in the room, and I'm not referring to the symbol of the Republican Party. Only Representative Terry Carver from Colorado Springs wore a mask throughout the meeting. I asked McKean if that's the imagery he wants for the Republicans he now leads.
It's everybody's choice what they do. Is it the imagery we want? No, it's the personal choice of our members whether or not they wear their mask.
It's Marshall Zellinger reporting. Most of us will not have to summon the courage of an ICU nurse treating one COVID patient after another. All of us will be challenged to find the basic courage of State Representative Terry Carver to do that right thing, the smart thing, the inconvenient thing, when just going along to get along would be easier. State Representative Carver, the only legislator at today's Republican caucus meeting to put on a mask and keep it on. Representative Carver's courage to follow the science and to protect her colleagues, even if they did not want to protect her, that is what each of us is asked to show. And not just the courage to wear a mask around people who disregard them. The courage to be that one coworker or classmate or parent or neighbor, the one who suggests maybe we should still be taking social distancing seriously. The courage to have an uncomfortable conversation with your family about how holidays are going to work. Courage to bring up working from home with your boss if that's possible. The courage to tell a customer to follow the rules or please leave. Every time we choose a bit of that basic uncomfortable courage, as Representative Carver did today, who knows? Maybe it'll inspire some other people to do the same. Today is the first day on the job for RTD's new CEO and general manager, and Deborah Johnson knows that she is up against it. She spent the day talking about how she plans to listen. She will hear how RTD has struggled, first to attract drivers, then to fill their routes during the pandemic, and most lately, to have the money to pay them. There are going to be some urgent erosion control efforts up in areas of northern Colorado where the two largest wildfires in state history burned. And that needs to happen before the drinking water supply up there is ruined. And next viewers came through again for our neighbors. You've raised $39,000 for this effort since last week. Your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign has now raised more than $1.5 million for causes across Colorado since June. $5 at a time adds up quickly when a whole bunch of people are involved. And we'll have a new idea coming your way Wednesday.
For a lot of folks that grew up in Denver, it's just kind of a fixture of the museum.
Whether it's the fangs or the noises. It's a fixture at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We wondered how it got there. And the answer to your question about where the wildlife went when wildfires burned Colorado's forests. Next. May I make a recommendation? You have been asking us how Colorado's wildlife dealt with wildfires. I, of course, am no elkologist, so we turn to the people with the expertise and a way to track the elk up near the Cameron Peak fire. Colorado Parks and Wildlife officers tracked 30 elk with GPS collars to see how they reacted to the approaching fire. Their YouTube video I recommend to you tells how the elk actually moved toward the active fire lines into the perimeter of that fire. CPW thinks that it's proof that the elk know how to navigate fires, to find safe areas with familiar food sources rather than just run for their lives into unfamiliar terrain. This all makes a lot more sense coming from the elkologist. So CPW wildlife biologist Angelique Curtis's YouTube video has a link on the next Facebook page.
Beneficial snow across the state tonight. Downtown Denver looks like a winter wonderland. A bit of ice and snow on the roadways with current temperatures in the 20s. We did see a high of 40, but we hit that after midnight. With this broad center of circulation, we'll continue to see snow, the heaviest of which will fall in the central and southern mountains where winter weather and travel advisories remain in effect. Denver, additional light snow tonight with the heavier bands pushing east where 2 to 3 inches of snow could fall out around Yuma, Akron, and Burlington. The mountain snowfall will be impressive. Many resorts trying to open this week. The snow moves out tonight. Skies will clear overnight, and we're back to sunshine tomorrow. We have a low of 24 with cloudy skies. With overnight clearing, we jump to 46 tomorrow. Mostly sunny and 40s for the rest of the week. Then we get into the 50s just in time for next weekend.
Snow and cold makes me want to hide in my basement by the fireplace. Real men, though, go out into the winter weather, where they compose delicate poetry.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the weather beat.
Just a little Monday snow. Big drink for a thirsty state. Beats wildfire smoke.
That was Corey Reppenhagen on the weather beat.
It's pretty fierce, and it's been around for generations at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, thanks to one guy.
Was known, far beyond Denver in the taxidermy world for his skill.
A museum's mascot, a tribute to the man who's kind of a legend. Next. Generations of kids have heard it. For 47 years, visitors to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science have been greeted by the sound of that roar. Photojournalist Tom Cole went in search of the story behind that museum's famous saber-toothed cat.
If you've been to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, you've probably heard that sound. But to know more about the roar,
most of the time it's kind of like a ghost town.
You gotta head deep into the belly of the museum with archivist Sam Schiller.
It is our job to maintain and preserve the history of the museum.
Him in the field. And a large part of that history is Henry Witcher's Inchimuk. He created 41 exhibits in his 33 years here, among them this one.
The original diorama depicts two Smilodon saber cats attacking a giant ground sloth.
These are the original cats from the diorama.
The exhibit was on the first floor for about 20 years before it was taken down in 1993.
One of the heads of the saber cat turned out so well that they decided to repurpose the mold and turned it into the growling cat bank that we now have on the first floor.
A growling bank that's literally making bank.
We statistically average about $10,000 a year in coins from the saber cat.
Come on, Money.
Henry Witcher's Inchimuk won the first ever World Taxidermy Championship Lifetime Achievement Award in 2007. He was a legendary taxidermist right here in Denver. And that name, Inchimuk, it was given to him from an Alaskan expedition in 1957. It means man who makes things live again. Now, when you hear that roar, maybe it'll mean a little more.
As I understand it, I mean, that thing is here to stay.
For Next, I'm Tom Cole.
I love that. Inchimuk, man who makes things alive again. So many of Colorado's outdoor goals are out of reach for those of us who are not in shape. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a family-friendly outdoor quest. That and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today was a snowy trip to the playground, because that trip is part of a quest by a family of Coloradans trying to get to 30 parks in 60 days. You can tell this from that last big snowstorm we got. It's something fun for the family to do during the pandemic. Amanda shot us that photo of her 4-year-old son, River, going down the slide at Airplane Park in Littleton. They just hit park number 24 on their quest. Take Them to the Park is the name of the Instagram page where they're chronicling their family challenge. I just love how accessible this is to people, whether you're family or somebody older who just wants to get out and see places. Try and do 30 parks in 60 days. Kakoa writes in tonight to say that we are biased. Science supports a firm, motionless Earth. That's the flat earth stuff, yeah, my asking. A great question tonight is John, who says, what are the plans for anti-vaxxers who refuse the COVID vaccine? So, John, actually the governor was talking about this today, and it depends on the efficacy of the vaccine. The higher the efficacy, then the lower percentage of the population that would need to be immunized in order to have a herd immunity effect. The governor said he estimates 70 to 80% of people getting the vaccine would do it, and he said there are going to be lines. He doesn't see that as a problem in our state. We shall see. See you next time.